I recently got a question from an online client, and he was asking about breathing during heavy sets, especially between different rep ranges. So say if you have sets of 3 or sets of 5 or maybe sets of 6 on the big 3 movements, squat, bench, and deadlift, when you should breathe, when you should hold your air, things of that nature, and how to implement that and get the most out of your training, but again at the same time not adversely hurt your health at the same time. Now this is a really good question because powerlifting isn't exactly the healthiest sport. I mean, we're putting hundreds of pounds on our spines and in our hands. So I would say take this with caution because you certainly could have moments where you feel faint, you pass out, your blood pressure is going to rise. So all that can happen, but if you're looking to maximize your training in those 3 lifts with rep work, this is what I would suggest. So I know for me personally, especially when it comes to bench press, if it's 3 reps or less, I will hold my air no matter what. It doesn't matter the percent, the weight. I just hold my air for 3 reps or less. It's just the way I do it. I can maintain tightness, keep my arch, keep my lats locked in considerably better than if I take a breath between each individual rep. Now once I start getting into reps of 5, then it kind of becomes how long can I hold my breath and feel comfortable. So if the weight is less, which it should be on a set of 5 than it would be typically a set of 3, I may try to push my air and hold it until 5. If I can't, then I'll let it out again, take a big breath, reset, and go again. Bench press is a little bit easier to do that with. Now when it comes to squat and deadlift, my recommendation on the deadlift would be to take a breath of air for each rep, especially once you're in those maximal weights, or you can take your air at the top. So you'll see a lot of guys, especially conventional, take a big air, pull, and then as they lock it out, take another breath, go down, and come back up, and they'll basically get their air at the top each time when they don't need that tightness to help pull it off the floor. And I know teammate Matt Ledusky actually has a video gone viral of him passing out from holding his hair on a deficit deadlift. So that can definitely happen on heavy attempts on deadlift. As for squat, it becomes a bit tricky because the question becomes, are you in wraps? Are you using a mono? Are you walking it out? What do your reps look like? What percent is on the bar? There's a lot of different variables that are going to determine whether you should hold your air for the duration or not. I know if I'm going to do a single, when I take my air, when I unrack the bar, whether it's in a power rack or if it's in a monolift, I will hold my air for that 1 rep. It should equivalent out to about 10 seconds or so. You will definitely have a lot of pressure, but it's going to let you maintain that tightness, especially if you're going for a PR single. Now as for reps, if you're in a monolift, you might be able to get away with 2 good solid reps because you don't have to spend the energy and time walking the bar out. You can get tight, take your air, unwrap the bar, down, maybe a sip of air in and back down, so you won't actually let any air out, you just sip more in. As for a triple or more, you're probably going to have to take your air at some point. The key is when you take that air, you make sure you're still set, go through all your checklists, and then go again. Don't take your air and just go. Take your time, you're not in any rush, especially if you're trying to handle heavy weights and hit a rep PR. Something that also isn't really considered was whether you're raw or in gear. If you're in gear, your descent on squats are going to be much slower than someone who competes raw. You know, raw lifters should basically drop down and come basically right up. You're slam grinding on the way up, but by no means should you be taking 5, 6, 7 seconds to get down in a raw squat compared to as a multi-ply guy who is going to have to keep sitting back into the suit, hit his step, and then come up. Especially if they're in full gear, you probably hardly ever see guys take a double in full gear. You know, when their straps are up, they're probably going to be taking singles. And even if they don't, they're probably going to take more air at the top again for that second rep because the time under tension is considerably more rep per rep compared to raw versus a gear. So I'd say the major considerations are what what do your reps look like? If you got low reps, try to hold your air throughout the entire set. If you have maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 reps, you're gonna have to figure out how to time your air. Usually every 3 reps is good, especially on bench press. Deadlift, you can get away with doing each one. A lot of people just like to set up on rep work on their deadlift anyways, so they'll basically pull cluster singles that reset between each rep. And then on the squat, it's going to vary on what you're using to squat. Are you raw? Are you multiply? Are you using a rack? Or are you using a monolift? Are your straps up? Or your straps down? All those factors come into play on when you're going to take your air. Now, my caution would be is if you feel faint, you need to stop. There's no reason to hold that air to try to get one more rep. If in doubt, retake your air so you can be able to get some oxygen throughout your body and then re-hit your set. The idea of taking your air is mainly to maintain tightness. So as soon as you let that air out, your chest is going to fall. That's naturally what happens when you exhale hard. Your chest will come down, and that's going to let you have a more neutral spine, but at the same time, there may not be enough stiffness because you can't push out as hard again. If you think about it, if you have hundreds of pounds on your back, when you take that air and you lift, the bar is sinking in. As soon as you let that air out, that bar is going to compress down, and you won't be able to take a full breath compared to what you could before you had 4, 5, 6, 780 pounds on your back. And the same thing goes with the bench press. When you unrack the bar, you've already got your air held, your back's in the proper position, your lats are tight, you've got your nice arch, everything's perfect. But as soon as you let out some air, that falls. And that could be an extra inch that you've got to press. Well, if you're going for a PR single, that extra inch could be the difference between a made lift and a missed lift. So there's some things to think about. You're going to have to play around and figure out what works best for your body. I know what works best for me, so that's how I implement it, but someone that could be in worse shape or better shape than me may be able to get either 4 reps respectively or maybe only 1 rep respectively. I think that really comes down to an individualistic standpoint, and it's something you got to take into consideration. But all being said, if your goal is weight and performance, especially for powerlifting, you want to hold that air as long as you can, especially on singles. You don't want to let that air out. If you have any questions, feel free to leave anything in the comment section. And as always, you can get the training logs and information on elitefts.com and brandsmiley.com.